Writing and playing has kicked my butt this week. I worked on the Faraway score that I'm working on with Brian Matthews down in Jacksonville, and I want to use this platform just to talk about process briefly. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to keep this video pretty short, but I thought that this is the perfect platform to ramble about how to break something apart and how to tackle a piece and all the infinite ways that you could possibly tackle a piece in general, but especially a piece that isn't yours. Right? This is a piece of art that already exists, made by a famous playwright and being put on by another artist. So just sort of two layers of whose artwork this is that isn't mine. Okay, so that's the foundation. Thinking about works, thinking about a way that one can help a production without being the center, without being the focus. So Brian and I talked about this play for a long time before I started writing. We discussed what a score would look like, why have a score. It's a complicated play that deals with complicated issues, all of them deeply relational issues, large scale or small scale, or large scale being imitated by small scale. I talked a little bit in the last video about having written a hymn for it, trying to go this route of sort of turning some of the imagery on its head, without stepping on it, without destroying the original intent of the work. So I'm gonna be all over the place here. I apologize. So I began working on it a couple weeks ago, and I'd written the hymn as a sort of thesis to the piece. I like to do that with my work. It's not something that every artist needs to do, I think, but I like to have pieces speak to each other. I think I'm a bit of a concept artist in that there is usually something that is tying. There are motifs, there are themes that are tying pieces to each other in no linear direction. So I made this hymn, and that helped me begin to write the actual score. So the score has been the attempt for the score has been to parallel the emotion of each scene. There are 3 scenes, 3 acts. And the thing that really struck me with this play, and you should go read it, or find some performance of it that you can watch, but the thing that has really stuck with me in this play, now we're getting into process territory, only 4.5 minutes into the video, is that every scene deals with some very intimate communication, an intimate relationship, but it's using that as the vehicle to describe larger issues. So this first scene that I wrote for is boiled down a scene where a young girl sees something she shouldn't see, and in the middle of the night, and has a conversation with her aunt about what she's seen. And you could take that apart and say, there's this paralleling of like this sort of post-truth duel, this sort of chess game that goes on between the two characters, where they are negotiating truth, negotiating reality with each other, and that exists, that is true. But the thing that struck me the most about that is not that element, it's that they're dealing with the sanctity of home, I think. I think that's something that I think about, something that I write about quite a bit in my own work, but there's this dealing with home, with sanctuary, with trust, not just the truth between two people, but trust. So I wrote the hymn in a way that deals with that, and I wrote the piece of music that sat behind Act 1 in such a way too, subtle and really low-lying. I did not want to focus too heavily on it. Something that would evolve very slowly and modulate slowly and almost imperceivably. That was my goal. We have a helicopter somewhere over the bay. So I tackled that and I sat on it for a while, and I began working on Act 2 this weekend, Sunday night, and I finished yesterday afternoon. Working Sunday night, all of Monday, all of Tuesday. It's Wednesday. Spoiler. Takes me a couple days to edit these sometimes. So that act deals with two characters who are in the same workplace, and it's sort of benign conversations, almost flirty, not super heavy, except that as you hear the conversations progress over time, you realize that they're discussing watching executions, and I think if you're reading into it while you're watching for the first time, or while you're reading for the first time, you kind of assume that you may even see one of these executions, and lo and behold, you do. So I wanted to write a piece that would provoke that tension, something that would create a sense of dread in amongst something very benign, and this was the struggle. So this was Sunday night, and this was my dilemma. Brian and I spoke at length about this before I even began, where I almost tried to talk him out of trusting me to do something like this, because I know myself, and I know that my work is intensely autobiographical. I would argue that all art is intensely autobiographical, because you are sort of using yourself as the conduit. You are expressing through this body and through your own imperfect brain, and so you create only what you can perceive. I lean into that. I lean into making imperfect art, a very human art. I think there's something really holy about that imperfection, about what we are. You know, what we are is just faulty, human, and made of flesh that kind of falls apart after a while. So I wanted to lean into that. Anyway, I always want to lean into that. But I tried to convince him that I wouldn't be the best for this, because I don't know how to write about dystopia. I don't know how to write about genocide and this surreal existence where everything becomes polarized and things like the rivers are out to get you. I don't know how to write for that. I've never lived that life. So my workaround in our conversation, we decided that that's okay, that we can find ways to accommodate this, and that personal experience can play a role in the way that somebody writes. So I wrote this hymn around, and Act 1 around home and what that means. And Act 2, there kind of was no workaround. So I spent a day and a half, more than a day and a half, kind of method acting my composing and my recording process, in which I really tried to have this duality where I was making and I was embodying the feeling of dread, and also trying to be the receiver of that, to think about what I would feel if I were the audience of that, kind of this underlying story, sort of foreshadowing through abstract music what is to come. And it's really hard. Really hard. It really tore me apart. And I've spent a lot of time, learning how to deal with the troubles of making. There are always troubles of making when you're dealing with yourself, when you're interacting with, you're communing with yourself and your artist, your internal artist. It's really, really difficult sometimes. You have to learn different techniques for how to deal with yourself. There's a great book out there called The Artist's Way that has like silly little suggestions, like take yourself on an art date. You know what? Yeah, do that. If that's what you need, if that's what your artist needs, that's what helps heal you, helps bring you back after you've depleted yourself, after making a work. Good, do that. So I know how to do that, but it was really hard, and I really did exhaust myself making that. And I'm not sharing that, to say like, oh, look at me, I've had a really hard time, but rather to bring you on a journey. I think that's it's going to be the hardest part of this writing process for this piece, and I'm really glad that it was really difficult. I'm very grateful that it was hard, because that means I put a lot of myself into it. So so I have one more act to go. That should take me a couple weeks, I think. We'll see. Some processing on this last act to do before I can move forward, I think. And I have some artist dates to take me on. Anyway, this hasn't been as short as I thought it was going to be. I don't think I'm going to edit this video at all. So maybe I'll even put it out today. The only other point of housekeeping is I have been kicking around doing some touring with Doug and with Claire, in some capacity, maybe with other people as we go. But I wanted to do 2 this year. I want to do a local one pretty soon. This is it's mid-April right now. I want to do 2, probably before the summer or by the summer. Local to Atlantic City and Philadelphia. I think that would be really fun. House parties. 2 people just walked by very close to my car, and I wanted to smile at them and not seem like I was just gesticulating wildly to my rearview mirror, which is exactly what I'm doing. Anyway, that'll be the only cut in this whole video, I think. Where was I? So yeah, local tour. I want to do a local tour. I live near Atlantic City. I'm near Philadelphia and in Philadelphia very frequently. I want to set up house parties, and the reason for that is I really want to share an intimate space. I have a lot of music, and people that I play with have a lot of music to share. I want to share that with a house, with a small, intimate space. I think that's where I am right now. For the fall, I want to do another tour, and I want that to be much larger. I'm thinking Eastern Seaboard. In my crosshairs is Jacksonville, where Brian is. So if you're anywhere along the way, or anywhere near, anywhere along the way, that would be really fun. I'd like to most likely keep it to kind of house shows too, or small venues, but I really want to focus on creating, sharing and being able to be part of the creation of a beautiful, intimate, event. So if you'd like to share a space with me and my beautiful, wonderful friends and colleagues, reach out. It'd be really cool. All right, that's all for now.